that's not even on the list. I know author is, but to me, writer is even more broad than that. I write every day. When I was 6, I knew that I was going to be a writer, and specifically a writer of books. But that thing, that pen in the hand, or typing, but I often do pen in the hand, like that is me to the core. And those other things, writing books, running rituals, being involved with, beautiful magical events, like I adore them. But if I have to claim one thing, it's I'm a writer. So it's more like a calling than a plan. So I became a writer. I went to a fairly non-traditional primary school. And when I was, I think I was 6 years old, and I was in this big classroom, which was all year 1s and year 2s together. There was about 60 kids and about 4 teachers. And it was a big noisy classroom, but they had a little library, its own library off the edge of the classroom. And as you came into this little library, on the floor, on the right-hand side, there was a basket, an open basket. And in it, it had these blank books. And they were just made out of paper stapled together. But they were all different colours and all different shapes. So you might get like a triangle one with only 4 pages, or you might get a kind of mid-blue oblong one with 20 pages. And you could just, they're all blank, so you could just rifle through this basket and you could choose the book that you were going to write. And then you would take it back to the writing area and you would draw, because we couldn't really write at that stage. So you would draw the pictures, I would draw the pictures in, and then I would take it to a teacher and I would tell them the text. Okay, these words go on this page, and they would write them in. And then at the end, I would have a book that I'd written. And it was just like from the minute that I saw that basket of books and I understood what they were, so I was like, this is me. This is it. And, like I had a similar revelation around reading when I remember really clearly the moment that I learned to read. And so this thing about words and putting words on the page and being read and reading, like they've just always had this incredibly powerful, magical import for me, and this transition of creativity or ideas into the actuality of the words in the book. Like I just love it. And so yes, I always knew, and here I am, still always know. I do have one, and to me, writing a book is it's more like managing a project, really. I mean, obviously writing is involved, and I have a different regime depending which stage of the task I'm at. In the first draft, I'm very practiced and particular. I guess I know what works for me. This is what works for me, and I pretty much do it if I'm writing a book. I get up in the morning and I might do a few other little things first, some daily practices, and have a cup of tea, maybe even have breakfast, possibly do some gardening. But basically, my first work thing is I go to my desk, my computer, and I do this whether I'm traveling or at home, and I write 1,000 words. And sometimes that takes an hour, and sometimes it takes 3 hours. And I'm pretty committed to that. Some books I'll write longer, more than that, if I'm in the flow. I really never write less unless it's like 973 or something, but I don't just write 300 that day. And so that is to get the first draft. I never reread it. Maybe I read a few sentences just to see where I was up to. And I don't always, or very rarely do I write a book in order from beginning to end. So I might be feeling really off, like, I have to write 1,000 words. And I'll just pick something like one of the processes or exercises, which in a way is simpler to write because I'm giving instructional writing. So I might do that 1,000 words. I don't know, like you're my editor, you might have noticed that all my exercises and processes are basically 1,000 words. That's why. I think it's a good length as well. So then later, when I get into the editing or the rereading process, it takes up much more of my day than just that 1,000 words. Like I might do it for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and again in the afternoon or possibly the evening. Not the evening so much lately, but that's a much kind of slower, more grinding process. Whereas the first draft, like I've noticed, if I keep writing, unless it's something that I really know really well exactly what I want to say, my kind of edge goes off after that kind of about 1,000 words. So I just keep it to that. And if I do it every day, we can see how it adds up. Already 2. Oh, mean. What a mean question. Okay. Well, I am going to pick Journey to the Dark Goddess because it's just like I was saying about writing, it's me to the core. This is kind of me to the core in a way. It is the second book that I ever had published. So sometimes I read it now and I'm like, oh, Jane, you could have like been a bit more forthcoming there, or oh, like that could, blah, blah, blah. So I'm a little maybe critical now, not in a bad way, of parts of that book. But I think for me, it's like this deep dive into a core practice that is not only my practice. I mean, I think it's held through initiations throughout the world and throughout human history, throughout mythology. But maybe it's such an iconic book for me because people had always told me I should write a book on the Dark Goddess. And this is before I'd written any published books. So I absolutely did not know how to do that. And every book that I could find on the Dark Goddess, and I think it's probably different now, was an academic book. And I was like, I don't want to go into academia. I don't have that drive. I don't want to do a big research project. Like, I know the Dark Goddess from ritual, from dream, from magic, from myth, from fairy story. Like, that's my relationship to the Dark Goddess. I couldn't, people have turned that kind of thing into an academic work, but I didn't have that drive. And so I just was holding this kind of, you should write a book about the Dark Goddess. Oh, the Dark Goddess is calling me. Oh, the Dark Goddess, thing. And then after Aphrodite's Magic, I wrote and published. So simply and sweetly, thank you, everyone, including Aphrodite, for that support. I was like, okay, now I know how to write a book. Now I know how to write my book. And so then I could turn to the Dark Goddess and go, okay, I'm coming for you. And, luckily her arms are always open. And so I was able to write the Dark Goddess book. And I really feel like every book that I've written for me is a piece of my work, that what I have created, established, worked on is still a work in progress. To some point, writing the book puts a, momentary stop to it. Like, well, that's a finished piece, but I don't never look at the Dark Goddess again. Like, I'm still with the Dark Goddess. And the second book, if I'm allowed to say it, so that would be my most recent one. I think I would pretty much always say that. And it's Falling Through the Tree of Life. And that was a major book for me. It took me 3 years to write. And because it's about the Kabbalah, it's just massive. When I say that, most books take me a year to write. So 3 years was like this big, big chunk. And I do feel like it's got my heart and soul on the page and my heart tearing apart on the page. And at the moment, I'm in love with it. I'm in love with all my books, but that's the most passionate, like in this moment, love of it there. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. Thank you for it. So Journey to the Dark Goddess has sold nearly 20,000 copies. And when I was writing it, I thought, who is ever going to want to read this book? Like, I couldn't imagine it. Like, who is going to want to send themselves into the darkness, into the depths, into the unknown, cast away everything you've already known, cast away everything you love and that makes you you, and go on this journey. There's no end. Who knows what will happen? You'll probably be eaten or dissolve or something. And I was like, who would want to read this? I couldn't imagine it. I was like writing this great book for me, my great book. And at the same time, I could not imagine there was any audience for it at all. Like, literally, I was thinking, the only people who buy this are people who know me. I don't know. So it's been, every book has been a delight to me. And that one is the seller that sells. And, that people, every week I get emails or texts or instant messages about, I'm reading the Dark Goddess. This is saving me, changing my life, showing me things, giving me peace, or whatever it might be, offering me healing. Like, every week I get those emails still. I think it was published in 2012. So it touches a chord, and it's, the thesis around the Dark Goddess, not only my own thesis, like the general thesis about the Dark Goddess, is that she represents the hidden and denied part of our society, contemporary Western society, the feminine and the darkness put together, it's a double kind of whammy. And it turns out that people are starving for it, like that they're aware of that gap, that they're longing for it, that they're not just only in denial and repression. That's what we've been sold, that this is a bad, nasty, please avoid if possible area. But it's impossible to avoid because it happens to everyone, that you get, darker patches in your life. How could you contrast the light if you didn't have darker patches, obviously? And we all meet deaths of loved ones. We all have things end unexpectedly. We all have health challenges. We all have these challenges from the dark goddess or the darker realm of life, the mysteries into our life. And yet there's so few ways and so few heartfelt, legitimate ways to approach it or meet it. And obviously therapy is one way, but in a way that individualizes the experience. And the other way is a more ritualistic way, a whole society way. And that's where we're really lacking. And so a book like Journey to the Dark Goddess, I think, offers anyone reading it a place in that, you're not alone. And actually this is part of life, and it's meant to be part of life. And here's some ways that you can be with it and show up to it and understand some of the power and the mystery of it, and have an experience with it instead of just blocking it away. And so to my surprise and delight, people are up for that and seeking that and eager for it and welcoming it and grateful for it. So go Dark Goddess, that's all I can say. Well, I can't really choose one writer because basically every time I read a book, I admire the writer. I'm like, great, good on you, or I love this bit. Or my friend Kim once said that I was the only person she knew who would read the whole book for one good sentence, or one good character, or one good plot point. And I read a lot, I read at least 2 or 3 books a week. So I actually love books and I love reading. But I am going to try and answer the question. So recently, in the last week, I read this fantastic book, 84K by Claire North. Not only that, I discovered that one of my favourite authors in that children's teen realm is Catherine Webb. Well, I discovered that Catherine Webb and Claire North are actually the same person. So 2 of my favourite authors turned out to be the same person. How good is that? So this was fantastic. It's a dystopian novel and obviously a bit of a riff on 1984, and it's set in England, a depressed, very near future England. So powerful, the story and the characters and the plot, gorgeous, gorgeous. But what I loved the most was the writing, the actual writing, the actual way that the words fall onto the page was so innovative and immediate and real life. And I actually literally have never seen anyone exactly write a book like that. And I just grabbed 3 other books off my bookshelf, which I read all recently, all of which are fantastic. This is another science fiction fantasy. I read a lot of that, Earth. It's not the most brilliant book ever, but it's really profound and deep. And I love, and so David Brin wrote that. I love fantasy. I love the ideas. I love the play. I love the commentary of fantasy, feminist science fiction in particular. So Ursula Le Guin, Doris Lessing's Shikasta. I can't imagine why that isn't on the top 10 fantasy and science fiction books ever, because that is just riveting and unbelievable and explains the whole of Earth's history from beginning to end. I also, sorry, this is not a short answer, but I'll try and wrap it up. Last year I read this really extraordinary, really quite bizarre, seriously bizarre book, The Book of Joan. Never read anything like it in my life. And then it's also fantasy, but it's on another level. And I just also grabbed off my shelf J. Michelson's Everything is God. Really beautiful book about non-duality from a Jewish perspective, but a Jewish mystical perspective, obviously related to my interest in the Kabbalah. But it's a kind of book I think when I put it down, if I'd started it again right away, which I kind of wanted to and haven't gone back to yet, I would it would be another layer and another layer. Every time I read it, I would be learning more things. And I love books like that. I can't stop without saying, I love science and astrophysics in particular, a universe from nothing. I have always wondered, why is the universe here? Maybe you have wondered that as well. Well, Lawrence Krauss gives it a good go on answering why actually is there a universe here, and in language that the layperson can almost always understand. I did get a bit lost in the maths, but I skipped over that section, and I could still pick it up. So those are three areas that I love the most, and you can see it was why I was like, oh, this question. 3 areas I love the most is science fiction and fantasy, particularly feminist social commentary edge of that. Reading like science and particularly maybe astrophysics and physics for the layperson. And that, to me, mixes up with mystery and the Kabbalah and all of that. They meet at the edge. And contemporary fiction, particularly written by women authors. Those are my 3 passionate love areas of reading. And there's always this tradition that authors never talk about the books they're currently working on. So I'm working on another collaborative project. I've written a couple of books with a co-author, Theo Gede-Palmer, and we are working on another one. Also, the previous book, all of my books, they're a bit like children, and I know many people have said, but as in, they were always still around and they always still want attention. And so, here I am talking about my beautiful moon books and dreaming into, I'm not quite writing it yet, but I guess dreaming into the 3 books I published through moon books have all been goddess related, very strongly goddess related. And I'm really aware that I've been on an arc, that took that with me, but in a way was somewhere different. And so I can really feel the call for that, to return to that, some goddess, some mythology, some potential moon books. Goodness. I always have, even the book I'm writing, which takes, 98% of my writing power, the other 2% is like playing or dreaming or flirting with these, the 10 or 12 potential books that are kind of, hovering around in the aether and seeing which one's coming forward and which one's maybe receding and, all of that. Oh dear, 1 minute, how mean. I think I'd sit next to her and hold her hand and look into her eyes, really. And I think that, 15, such an age. I always felt ancient when I was young, even when I was a child, let alone when I was a teenager. And I guess I'd just like her to see how, in a way, how young I feel right now, and alive and relatively freed. And I think words in a minute wouldn't do it, but I think just turning up, holding her hand and looking in her eyes, I think that'll do it. Because in a way, she already knows everything. She's already doing it. She's certainly already a writer, and she's really into magic and myth and love. And so I think she's got it all. She just that extra, it's all good. It'll happen. My top tip for an aspiring writer is you have to write. I'm sure many people have said this. Doesn't matter if you write with a pen, with a computer, into a voice recorder, basically write. The best advice is write every day, and I do that with a journal. I write 1 page, literally from the top of the page to the bottom of the page every day. I've done it since I was about 24. And my argument is if I write every day, I'll know I'm a writer, and it's kind of worked.